No. All right. Hi, Fennville Middle School. This is Mr. James. I am here with Coach Quinn Rice. He is the assistant men's basketball coach at Rochester University. So I have a list of questions that you guys have kindly submitted for me to ask him, and we'll kind of just go through these questions one at a time and get his take. So, Coach Rice, the first question I have for you, tell us a little about your position and where you work. So what is Rochester University like? How big is it, etc.?
Yeah, so I am the assistant men's basketball coach at Rochester University. I'm also the head men's and women's golf coach. And then I have some athletic department kind of jobs that I do as well. But the main thing is the assistant basketball coach. And so basically, and I don't want to answer too many of your questions off the bat, but basically what my job is I basically coach. So I'm on the floor during practice and games. I recruit. So I'm calling, texting, talking to high school players to recruit them. And then I also do a lot of what we call administrative stuff, which is like planning travel for our team when we go on the road, planning meals for our team when we're on the road, buying all the gear for the team. So those kind of roles as well. A little bit about Rochester University. We are a small private Christian school on the east side of the state in Rochester Hills, Michigan, which is about 30 minutes just straight north of Detroit. And so we're really small. We have about 1,200 students, which is pretty small for a college. Most, you think of like, Western Michigan has over 20,000 students. Grand Valley has over 20,000 students. Ferris State has about 13,000. So we're pretty small. But because we're small, we have a really individualized education. So what that means is we have small classes and professors really get to know you, and you really get to know them, and you aren't just a number at our school. So that's a little bit about me in the school, but I'll let you ask your questions.
All right, thank you. So the first question I have is, describe your journey to becoming a college coach. Like, why did you want to do it?
Yeah, so my journey to becoming a college coach is a little different. A lot of people get into coaching after they're done playing. So a lot of college coaches are guys who either played college basketball or played college basketball and then professional basketball. And then when they're done, with their playing, they go into coaching. And so my route is a little different. I actually did my undergrad at Ferris State, and so I actually went to college to be a pharmacist. And so that's kind of where I started. And I got about a year and a half into it and realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so kind of went back to the drawing board, and my dad has coached football and track and wrestling for over 30 years. My grandpa was a track and cross country coach for almost 50 years. And so I've just always kind of been around athletics and around coaching. And so, when I decided not to go into pharmacy and was looking for other things to do, it kind of always came back to athletics and coaching. And I always said, I wanted to do something that I loved. I wanted to do something that didn't really feel like a job. And so I kind of settled on coaching. And so once I kind of made that decision, I reached out to Ferris State's men's basketball staff and asked if I could start, volunteering and working with them. I did that for 2 years. And then once I got done there, I got a job as it's called a graduate assistant. And I got that at Central Michigan University. And so I was there for 2 years. And as a grad assistant, I was working directly with the coaching staff on a bunch of different things. But so I was part of the staff there. And then once I finished my master's degree at Central Michigan, I got the job here at Rochester, and I've now been there for about a year.
All right, thank you. So how long, that kind of maybe answers the next question. So the next question I have is, how long have you been a coach?
Yeah, so So I have been, my role at Ferris wasn't really as a coach. I started getting more into some of the coaching responsibilities when I was at Central Michigan. Um, and so I would say I've been doing coaching responsibilities for about 3 years, and I've been working in college basketball for 5.
All right, thank you. So the next question I have, do you ever practice with the people you coach? And to kind of go with that, do you ever think that the exercises you give them might be too hard?
Um, I don't practice per se. So when we do different drills in practice, I will be active in those drills. So I may be, dribbling to a location and passing, or I may be rebounding shots and passing. But I'm never like actually playing with our players. I did play in a few open gyms with them in the summer, but not so much in practice. When we're in practice, it's pretty much just them. Um, and then, do I ever think I'm we're doing something that's too hard? Um, no, not really. I mean, most of the time we probably think that we aren't doing enough, um, but we have. I mean, my boss has coached for over 20 years at the college level, and so we both have a pretty good idea of where the line is as far as how far we can push our guys, and what's safe and what isn't. Um, so we both have a pretty good idea of where that is.
So the next question I have then is, who comes up with the drills and how do you guys come up with them?
Well, both myself and my boss. My boss's name is Coach Pleasant. He's the head coach, and so we both will come up with certain drills. Excuse me. It really just depends. A lot of our drill work early in the season is so we have, and I don't want to get too technical, but we have a offensive system and a defensive system. And those systems have different rules and they have different movements. And so early in the season, our drills kind of center around those things. And then as we kind of go further into the season and we start playing games, our drills become more of how we're going to defend very specific things that the other team does, or how we're going to attack offensively specific things that the other team does. And so that's where a lot of our drill work is. At the college level, there tends to be a little less drill work, because hopefully by this point, the players that we have are pretty good at the fundamentals. We still work on the fundamentals. They're very important, but we probably don't spend as much time on them as you would, say, in middle school or high school. And when I say fundamentals, I mean, just dribbling, shooting, passing. We still work on all those things, but for us at our level, it's more of a lot of 5-on-5 game-like kind of scrimmaging, if you will. And so that's a lot of what our drill work and our practices are.
All right. So the other questions I have for you is, how many days of the week does your team practice, like both during the season and during the off season?
So we'll start our preseason when the guys get on campus in the fall. And so right when they start classes, we'll start our preseason. The preseason is usually about a week or two of just conditioning, and then it's another week or two of individual workouts. So we aren't practicing as a team, but I'm bringing in guys individually to work out on their own, along with conditioning those weeks, and then we'll start kind of our full preseason practice, right around the middle to end of September. And so once we start, then we practice about 5 times a week, and and then as we get into the season and we start playing games, it just kind of depends on our schedule. But usually we're practicing 4 or 5 times a week and then playing a game or 2 a week. We always try and give our guys at least one day off every week. So we try and not go, 7 days in a row of practicing and playing. We try and always give them a day off somewhere in there. And then once the season is done, the players basically have nothing mandatory from the end of our season until the beginning of May. The middle of May. And then in the middle of May, we can start doing our summer workouts, which we usually just have open gyms where they can come in and play and scrimmage against each other. And then I also am bringing in guys individually to work out as well, just like I do for those couple of weeks in the preseason. And so that's kind of our year-long schedule.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the next couple questions I have are kind of what a middle school athlete could kind of start doing if they want to play at the college level. The first question is, like, what is the recruiting process as a high school student? Could you describe that?
Yeah. So for us, it kind of depends on what level you're being recruited at. The Division I schools, the Michigan States, the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Notre Dames of the world, they're recruiting basketball players, starting in their freshman, sophomore years of high school. And the reason they can do that is because, if you walk into a gym, you can usually tell, even someone who doesn't necessarily watch a lot of basketball, you can usually tell who the best players are in the gym. And so for them, they can start recruiting those guys very early, because from an early age, they can tell that they're going to be the best players, and everybody can kind of see that. For us, it's a little different. So there's Division I, there's Division II, and then there's NAIA, which is what we are. We're an NAIA school. And NAIA schools are kind of like Division III and NCAA Division III size schools, but we can offer athletic scholarships. And so for us, our recruitment usually kind of starts for people towards the end of their junior year of high school and the beginning of their senior year. So right about now, right about this time of year, we're starting to kind of finish up our recruitment of guys that are graduating this year, and we're beginning to start our recruitment of guys that will graduate next year. And so for us, that's kind of how it works. So we use AAU, which, for those of you that don't know, AAU is travel basketball in the summer, in the spring and summer, and so we use that to kind of start the process of finding guys to recruit. And so we'll go to AAU tournaments, and at AAU tournaments, it's really easy for us because there's a lot of games in one location. And so we can see a lot of teams in a short amount of time. And that's kind of where we start to kind of, we have an actual list on an actual whiteboard. And that's where we kind of start to, write names on that list. And then we'll start contacting them, usually start with a text and then a call. And then we usually just kind of keep in touch with them until they get to their their actual senior basketball season. And so that's kind of the process, and it just kind of depends. It's a little different for everybody. Some guys we recruit really early. We offer them a scholarship really early. And then maybe they've, already made their decision by October. And so then we have to move on to another guy. And a lot of what people don't realize about the recruitment process is that, we tend to miss on more recruits than we get. And that makes sense when you really think about it, because one player, one high school player might have 3 or 4 different schools that are recruiting him. He's only going to go to one of those schools, right? And so 3 of those schools are going to miss out on him. And that's just kind of the nature of the process. And so for us, if we have 2 or 3 scholarships left, we probably have to recruit 8 or 9 different guys to try and fill those 2 or 3 scholarships. And so that's a little bit of the process. There's a lot that goes into it. Recruiting is by far, the most important part of my job and of our jobs as college basketball coaches, outside of the actual coaching and playing of games. And some people would even say that recruiting is more important than those things, because at the end of the day, for us, I'd like to think that I'm a decent coach. My boss is a very, very good coach. But if we don't have good players, it doesn't matter. We could be John Wooden, we could be Coach K. If we don't have good players, we aren't going to win very many games. So I don't know how well I answered that question. There's just a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that comes into the process. But as far as a middle schooler trying to play college basketball, I would say, sorry, my watch. As far as a middle schooler wanting to play college basketball, I would say the things that are most important are, like I said, we don't spend a lot of time at the college level on the fundamentals because by the time you get there, you should have those mastered. So what I would say is master the fundamentals. Work on your shot, right? Shooting is something that everybody has a chance to be a good shooter, right? It just takes time and repetition and working on it, right? So work on your shot, work on your ball handling, work on your passing, right? All those things are important. Work on your footwork, right? Kind of master those fundamentals, and then also have a focus on defense, right? And so at the college level, it would amaze you how many very good offensive players we don't recruit, and instead recruit very, very good defensive players. Because at the end of the day, we kind of look at it and say we can usually get somebody a little better offensively. We can usually coach them and work with them to get them a little better of a shooter, or maybe a little better of a dribbler, but it's hard if guys don't want to play defense. It's hard to get them to play defense. Mm-hmm. And so I would say really, really focus on those things.
All right, thank you. You kind of answered the next question, but I'll ask it just to make sure. Mm-hmm. But the other question I have is, what does it take to play at the college level? Like, what do you guys look for in an athlete when you're recruiting?
Yeah, well, it helps if you're like 6'8". No, like, some things that you can't coach, like size, like quickness, like speed, and some of those are just God-given talents, that some people have and some people don't. I'm 6'2", I'm not 6'8". And I could train every day for the rest of my life to be a sprinter, and I'm never going to be as fast as Usain Bolt, right? So obviously, we all have kind of our limitations, but those are certainly things that we look for, kind of those God-given talents. But along with that are all those fundamentals that I mentioned, right? The shooting, the dribbling, the passing. There are guys on our team who may not be the quickest or may not be the tallest, but they're very, very good in some of those other areas. And that's why they're on our team, and that's why they get scholarship money to play college basketball. so I would say, all of those things. And I wouldn't say that there's one thing that we look for more than others. We really try and, try and just evaluate everybody kind of on an individual basis. And so I would say fundamentals, get a little quicker, get a little stronger. That's never going to hurt. And if you can grow 6 inches, then that would probably help too.
I gotta ask, as a teacher, what do you look for anything in terms of character, academics, things to that effect?
Yeah, and I'm honestly, it's really sad that I didn't say that to begin with. I guess for me, it's just those are all kind of givens in our business. I don't think there's really a college coach out there that that doesn't look for those things. At the end of the day, you're a student athlete. So you have to be able to get your work done and get the job done in the classroom. And for us, the better the student, the more likely we are to recruit you. And there's a lot of reasons why that's the case from both a education standpoint and also from a basketball standpoint. But if the better student you are, the easier it is for colleges to recruit you. And the more likely they are going to be to recruit you. And then, obviously high character, that's something, we look for, we really, really have a focus on high character kind of guys in our program. Our program is really no nonsense. What I mean by that is our guys go to class all the time. Our guys do their work. Our guys stay out of trouble. They don't break the law. They abide by the rules of the university. And when they don't do those things, there are very, very severe consequences. And so I guess that's why, like I said, for us, it's just kind of a given. We automatically don't recruit people that don't get the job done in the classroom and aren't good people, right? So be a good student, be a good teammate, be a good person. All of those things matter.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I got 3 more questions, and I would say these questions are the more unique ones, I would say.
Okay.
The first one being, who was the best player you ever coached? I don't know if any of the kids would know him, but.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'll give you the best player I coached or worked with at each school I was at. So at Ferris State, we had a guy by the name of Zach Hankins, and he was the 2-time NCAA Division II National Player of the Year. He was the best player on Ferris's national championship team. They won the national championship in 2018 in NCAA Division II. Went 38-1. He was the best player on that team. He was a 6'11", big and post player center. And he ended up, he played 3 years at Ferris, and then he ended up transferring to Xavier University, which is a Division I school in Cincinnati. They play in the Big East, so they play against schools like Marquette, Butler, Providence, that conference. And he ended up being a double-digit scorer at the highest Division I level. And now he plays overseas. He just finished his first season in, I think it was the Czech Republic. Yeah, so he just finished his first season over there. And so he's probably the best player I've ever been around. And then at Central Michigan, the best player I coached at Central probably a guy by the name of David DeLeo. Um, he's about 6'8", and he's a very, very, very good shooter. So he has the MAC, which is the conference that Central Michigan is in. He has the MAC. He has the most 3-pointers made in MAC history. And so he's arguably the best shooter that's ever been in that conference. And so he's probably the best player I worked with at Central. And then at Rochester, we had a guy who on our team this last year who was an NAI All-American. And his name is Armand Cartwright. And he was a 6'1" guard, but he averaged about 21 points a game for us. Led our team in assists. Basically played every minute of every game. And so he was a really, really good player too.
Wow. All right, my other 2 unique questions for you. I would say this one's probably the most unique one. And I'm pretty sure I know who asked it, and I think if it's the person I think it is, they'd be upset if I didn't ask you this question. So they want to know, what are your suggestions on how to increase their vertical jump, if you know of any?
You know, I don't calf raises, squats. There's a lot of, it's great living in 2020 because you can just go on the internet and there's so many resources. But there's so many different kind of vertical jump type workouts that you can do. I mean, but the main thing is working out your legs. So calf raises, squats, all kinds of squats, squat jumps, box jumps, front squats, back squat. I mean, anything that you can do to work out your legs is going to help your vertical jump. The other thing that I think people don't necessarily think about as much, but it definitely helps is your flexibility. And so a lot of jumping is the flexibility in your legs. The flexibility in your legs, the flexibility in your hips, especially. And so there's also a lot of benefits to doing stretching, doing like yoga, anything that kind of makes you more flexible in your legs, works out your legs, works out your hips, all of that. All of that kind of stuff is going to help your jumping.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, last question. I would say that this one's got me curious too. I think it's a really good question, but I understand if you cannot answer it because given this is your professional job and I wouldn't want to create any issues. So their question is, it's kind of controversial. So what are your thoughts on college athletes being paid for their likeness, or should college athletes get paid?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that.
Okay.
So my opinion is I am all for it. As long as it's organized and it's regulated in a way that's fair to everybody. I just worry, and obviously the NCAA just made the ruling on this that college athletes will be able to profit off their likeness here in the next whatever it is, year or two. My biggest worry with it is just that it's going to make it unfair because I don't know how regulated it's going to be. And so I think there's a lot of there's some schools that have a lot of boosters and have a lot of have a lot of money, have a lot of power, have a lot of connections to Nike or Adidas or whatever shoe companies sponsor them, and I worry that those schools are going to be able to kind of find loopholes or rig the system to where they can, they can basically pay any athlete, to come in and play for them, which isn't necessarily what, what the whole profiting off your likeness is meant for. So obviously, once again, just like recruiting, anytime you bring in recruiting, there's so many different things that go into it. But I just worry about it from a recruiting standpoint of is it going to be fair? And for me, it doesn't really affect me that much because I'm at an NAIA school, and the guys that come here and play aren't EA Sports isn't asking them to be in a video game. You know, like their jerseys aren't being sold. Maybe maybe they should make a little money off our media guy that I don't know, but I think at the highest level, at the Division I level where this is really going to apply, I just think that it has to be regulated in a way where it's fair for everybody. Where it's and when I say fair, I don't mean that everybody gets paid the same. That isn't what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's a lot of ways that universities and coaches and schools will be able to find loopholes in the system to get these recruits more and more and more money. And so, I don't know if you would understand this reference, but it's kind of a Pandora's box when you open it up, and there's just so many different things that can happen because of it, and I just worry that it's going to be kind of unfair.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you. That's the last question that I have. Is there anything that you would like to kind of shed light on? Anything that you think they should know about your job or anything before I let you go?
No, I mean, like I said, my job is like I said, it's basically three things, and that's recruiting, that's coaching on the floor, and that's the administrative stuff. And so those are kind of the things that I do. Obviously, at different times of the year, there's a little more emphasis on each of those three things. When we're in season, it's the emphasis is way more on coaching than in the off season when it's more on recruiting and kind of the administrative stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I spend most of my day doing. I guess the other thing that I would like to say is as a coach, as a college coach, I'm always talking to our players. And so, at the college level, it's different than at the high school level. At the high school or at the middle school or high school level, you may play 2 or 3 different sports. And so, in the fall, you might be a football player, but in the winter, you're a basketball player, and in the spring, you're a baseball player. And so, but at the college level, there's very, very few people that play more than one sport, right? And so everybody on our team is a basketball player 365 days of the year, the whole time they're in our program. And so, so for me, I'm always communicating with them. Most of the time, I don't go a day without talking to them. And so that's a big part of my job too, is that isn't necessarily coaching, that isn't necessarily recruiting, and isn't necessarily administrative. It's just kind of being there for our players, and constantly checking in on them, making sure that they're doing well in the classroom, making sure that that their life outside of basketball is okay, and making sure that whatever needs they have are I'm helping them meet them as best I can. And so that's a huge part of it. I think a lot of coaches put so much emphasis on recruiting and getting players to the school that once the players are there, they sometimes forget to kind of keep recruiting them. not that you necessarily need to recruit players that are already on your team. I know that might not make a whole lot of sense, but you always kind of have to check in on them. You always have to kind of take care of them. And for some of our players too, I mean, some of them are a long way from home. We have a guy from Italy. We have a guy from 2 guys from Africa. We have a guy from Tennessee. We have a guy from California, right? And so me and my boss, our head coach, I mean, we're kind of their, especially for those guys that are a long way from home, I mean, we're kind of their support system. We're kind of the people that they turn to when they need something, because their parents and their family are a long ways away. So that's a large part of the job too that I don't think people necessarily realize is kind of taking care of the players that are on the team. But yeah, so that's kind of it. No more questions?
No, I think that's all I have for now. So
Awesome.
I will let you go. And thank you again for doing this. I appreciate it. I'm sure I have some students that'll be excited to watch and learn some more.
Yeah, no problem. Let me know if you need anything else.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.